please welcome Kate DiBartolo for having the conversation, talking with loved ones about their wishes.
Thank you so much. Kelsey, thank you, SagePoint. Thank you guys all for coming. I often joke of like, who's ready to talk about death and dying? Isn't this the most exciting topic ever? But I actually don't see this topic as being around that. My friends think that my job must be depressing, and it's the exact opposite. I find that this is really about helping people think through how they want to live their life through the end, and how to respect their loved ones and honor their loved ones, and to really keep this in a positive, respectful manner, and it gives people a lot of comfort. So that's my hope, is at the end of this, I'm going to share a little bit with you about a lot of the free resources we have to help individuals have conversations with their loved ones so that we can talk about this. So a bit about the Conversation Project. We are a large national public engagement initiative with the very simple goal that we have everybody express their, that everybody's wishes for care at the end of life are both expressed and respected. So how do we get the general public talking about what they would want, breaking those social taboos so that they can start talking about this with their loved ones? And how can we make it so the healthcare system can reliably receive, record, and respect those wishes? We know that 70% of people say they want to die at home, and 70% are dying in facilities, which again is not to pass judgment on either one of those. It's just to show a little bit of the divide between what people are claiming they want and what is actually occurring, and more that we can learn about that. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more. 80% say they want to talk about this with their doctors, and yet in Massachusetts only 17% have, and in California only 7% have. So again, that's part of what we're trying to break through. And as they said in there, we know that 90% of Americans think this is important to talk about, and fewer than 30% have actually done it. That's the number that's starting to come up a little bit. It's gone up about 5% in the last few years, which when you take into consideration all of the adults in the US, that's a pretty big jump, but we have some room to grow. And one of the things that we're really focused on is making sure that these conversations are not just about what's the matter with you, but about what matters to you. So we're doing this a couple ways. One is to build awareness through national media campaigns, social media, how do you get the word out so people hear about this? Then we try to provide tools for people. So you all have a copy of the Conversation Starter Kit on your chair. There's more over here if you want to take them. And then the third piece, when we first got started, Kelsey was saying I started 5 years ago, we were just trying to build awareness and have these tools available. And pretty quickly, groups like SagePoint or others around the country were saying, we want to take this on in our community and help introduce it locally. And we realized we got to reach people where they live, work, and pray. This is a picture from a webinar that we ran, kind of a WebEx. Over thousands of organizations around the country now, individuals, organizations, big and small, are taking this on. We've got a call series coming up with hundreds of congregations around the country who are saying, this is not just a medical issue, this is not just a legal issue, we can help people spiritually and with a denominational context, and this is really important for our congregations. So that's the other way that we're helping get this out. So that's a little bit on the background. And what this really has to happen. We know that all change happens locally. It's people sharing their stories, engaging their loved ones. For every person who has this conversation, we're learning that 4 more start to happen because somebody goes and tells somebody else. You guys have the benefit of having attended this event. You can now go talk to some loved ones. I wanted to share with you one more video that we have about how do you prepare for it. That's what I wanted to chat about.
Mom.
Dad.
Sweetie, can we talk?
Everyone, dies.
So, how do you want to go?
Do you have a plan for your end-of-life care? Because I don't.
Don't take this the wrong way, but you're not getting any younger.
So I was binge watching Game of Thrones, which reminded me that everybody dies.
No. You've heard of a birth plan, right? It's like that. Only the opposite.
I need your help with something. Can we talk?
My biggest fear is losing you, and that I won't know how you want me to care for you toward the end.
Remember what happened to Aunt Maria? I don't want that to happen to you.
You've taken care of me your whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of you.
That's our hope, is that we go from this thing that causes anxiety and concern, and we don't want to offend anybody, and we're not sure what words to use, to giving people something to really hold on to. And one of the things that we've learned from a lot of national studies is that this topic is much better received from a positive standpoint. When it's around love, respect, honor, I need your help with something, approaching it that way as opposed to the scary, look at all these terrible things that can happen if we don't have the conversation, that can really shut people down. But approaching it with love is helpful. And Ellen often jokes that this should have been the Conversations Project, because many times it doesn't happen in one conversation, or people aren't receptive to it right away, but that there's ways that you can kind of chip away or share a little bit about your wishes if you're trying to engage someone else. I have a friend whose parents tried to talk to her for over a year about what their wishes were, and she would not have it. Nothing's going to happen to you, you're fine, you're young. And it was only after bringing it up multiple times and kind of from different standpoints was she willing to receive that information. She's now their power of attorney, she knows all of the stuff, she's talked to the lawyer, she knows where the will is. So sometimes you gotta work on people a little bit. So if you look at the conversation starter kit that we have, I've kind of talked to you a little bit about the early steps, but some of the things that we invite people to do, and if we had hours and hours together, I would have us sit at round tables and actually go through this and share our wishes with each other. But you think through some open-ended questions. What matters most to me at the end of life is, fill in the blanks. What comes to mind to you? And we've seen all sorts of answers that go from, I want to be listening to 90s music, I want to be on the beach, I want to be at a hospital with excellent nursing care. There's a wide variety of responses. There was somebody we met who went through it and raised her hand and said, the most important thing for people to know is that I hate having my feet tucked into the sheets. And if I can't speak for myself and somebody thinks they're making me cozy by tucking in the sheets, that is a really important thing for me to share with my loved ones. There was a great blog post that went viral recently of somebody saying, somebody better be threading my eyebrows, because if I'm in a coma or I can't groom myself, this is a very important thing for my loved ones to know about me, which is, that wouldn't show up in just a form or talking to a doctor. So getting people to start thinking about that. And then offering some scale questions. We find this is an easier way for people to approach the topic. So things like, on a scale of 1 to 5, are you concerned about receiving too much care or too little care? Where do you fall on that spectrum? Do you want your family or loved ones to do exactly what you say no matter what? Or what makes them feel comfortable in the moment? So by offering a couple of scales on how much information you want to have, the type of care you want to receive, how you want your loved ones to behave, that then can open up a bit of a conversation. It's not that you would say, I'm a 5, 4, 4, 4, 3, but if you notice that somebody's always on one end of the spectrum or the other, it gives you a starting point to say, oh, that's interesting. I was expecting it would have been over here. Can you explain a little bit more about that to me? We got hundreds of responses. We did this on our website, and in that open-ended question, have you guys ever seen a Wordle where the larger the word, the more frequently the term came up when people were filling this out? What's interesting, we're starting to look now, we're doing this with people of all different ages and backgrounds. We've been doing some on college campuses, and we're going to try to see what the difference is of the types of terms or words that come up for people. But you can see there's a wide range of what people say. Then the next steps are, okay, you've thought about what your wishes are. Who are you going to talk to? How do you make a plan? Who are you going to bring this up with? When are you going to do it? What would you need to do to start to feel comfortable? And we have different recommendations. The idea is to do this early and often. So we should be encouraging people when they turn 18 and their parents are no longer have access to their medical records automatically, or they're leaving the state for a job or for school. Let's have a conversation. If something unexpected occurred, what would you want me to know? We've seen this play out, and the students are actually much more open to this topic. They see natural disasters, terrorist activities, different events occurring, and they realize I need to be prepared. Seen some who are avid mountain bikers, or they're traveling internationally. Let's engage them then. to do it at every decade, just kind of a refresher. Has anything changed now? Different life events. I mentioned that we did it when we got married, but not about to have a baby, but halfway through pregnancy. We'll have a conversation again. I heard a story of a woman whose daughter was in labor, in the elevator, on her way to labor and delivery, and her husband stopped her and said, "If I have to pick between you and the baby, I pick you." She was like, "Ooh, should have talked about this beforehand," but okay, sounds good, got it. A couple years later, they are in the same elevator on the way to have number 2, and she says, "Now, as a parent and with this different frame of reference, if you have to pick between me and the baby, I want you to pick the baby." And it's like life had changed, her experiences had changed, and that's an important thing to take into consideration. It can be important if there's divorce. If somebody was your decision maker and you don't want that person to be your decision maker anymore, you got to think of who else you might want. It's a great time when people go on Medicare, or there's a death in the family, or just use some of these different prompts to help. April 16th is National Healthcare Decisions Day. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that. It's kind of this arbitrary holiday designed because nothing is certain in life but death and taxes. So on April 15th, you file your taxes, and on the 16th, you make your healthcare decisions. Use that as a chance to have the conversation. My dad just took a month-long motorcycle trip across the country, and we had a conversation about, given this trip, what would you want us to know if you were in an accident? Those wishes might be different than what he would want if he were home. So encouraging people to think about it that way. We have some icebreakers to consider if you're trying to figure out how might I bring up my own wishes with somebody, or how can I approach somebody else to find out a little bit more about what they want. So with that, I'm going to give you a couple of the tips that I've seen from going around the country over the last 5 years. I've traveled all over and have heard different examples from folks that I hope will be helpful as you think about how you might have this conversation. The first is to really give what I would say are current answers. What would you want right now if something happened where you couldn't speak for yourself? I've met too many people who, like my husband, answer it for many years from now, or somebody who says, well, I don't know if I'm going to get cancer, or if I'm going to be in a car accident, or what my scenario is going to be. And that's actually the whole point. You got to think about right now. And then if there's a diagnosis, you could change what your answers are, or later, another decade from now, maybe your wishes change. There's a gentleman that we knew of in the Boston area who had been very clear. He was in his 90s, he had a ton of different health issues. He was very clear with his doctor that he did not want heroic measures. And soon after, he was in the ICU, he'd been admitted, and he was asking for everything. And the doctor came in and said, I'm so surprised, Mr. Jones. I thought I understood what you wanted here. And he said, I got a great grandbaby coming in 2 weeks, and I will do everything I can right now to last for those 2 weeks, and then we can go back to the original plan. That is his current answer. Like, given the context of my life right now, this is what I want. And I think that's an important thing for us to understand, that these are conversations that can change, and you're not signing your life away in blood. Another one that comes up is the idea of home. So we talked earlier that 70% of people say they want to die at home. And I've had many events where people come up to me in tears and say, my grandma said the only thing she wanted was to die at home. That's the only thing I ever heard. And we couldn't do it. Her Alzheimer's got so bad, we couldn't care for her in the home. Or financially, we couldn't do it. Or I live in a 5th floor walk-up in Washington, D.C., and physically, we couldn't do it. And all these scenarios, and I think that this is another really important one to understand what the value is behind that. I know for my grandmother, it was as long as she could have her cat with her. She didn't care where she was, that was now home. Or my other grandmother who wanted to be able to have her space reflect her. So I know here you can bring your own furniture in or decorate it the way that you want. Or a family can come in and bring in home-cooked meals. Is it more that they want to be sure that people are going to visit them? What is it behind that home that we can really start to love and respect and honor, because we know that that isn't always possible? It's really important to ask if this person can and will honor your wishes. We have a whole guide for how do you pick your healthcare agent or proxy, but it doesn't have to automatically be a spouse or automatically be a family member. You want somebody who's going to be able to be your voice. You make the choices, they be your voice. There was a woman I met who said, it can't be my husband because he won't throw away a plant if it has one single green leaf left on it. And that's not what I want. There was a lady in Hawaii who said she asked her husband, And he said, no, dear, I will sit for 20 years holding your hand, stroking it gently. I would never let them undo a single machine. So that's not quite what I want. She went to her son, who was like, got it, Ma, you don't want a single thing, you're done, you're ready to go right now. And she was like, no, I'm pretty good right now. Another daughter cried so hard she couldn't participate in the conversation. And then she went to the third daughter, the fourth choice, who she originally thought wouldn't have been able to handle it. And she totally got it and said, I understand, depending on your prognosis, I would talk to the doctors and you might want to try XYZ, but not for too long. It was like, the golden ticket goes to you. This is the person who can actually honor what I want. We know that it's important to tell more than one person. I gave that example from my family with 7 kids who kind of knew what the plan was. There was a woman I met who said, I'm my husband's healthcare agent, and I know exactly what he wants, we've talked about it, but I am his second wife, and he has 3 adult children, and they have no idea. And they have no idea that he picked me, and it's gonna cause World War III if he doesn't just tell them ahead of time. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, but he can just say, all right, kids, Barbara's in charge, she and I have talked about it. Give people the heads up that you have talked about this, or even if you're picking one of your kids, tell the other kids that this has happened so that we don't end up with what we affectionately refer to as the seagull syndrome of the brother who lives in California who comes in, dumps all over the whole plan and swoops back out to the other coast. That's an important thing. I would kind of tell other people what you're thinking about here. It can be good to have multiple conversations. You guys can now be the ambassadors. Maybe you share what your wishes are with someone. Invite them to tell you what their wishes are, or start to spread this further and further, have it be a two-way street. There are some people who find it to be very helpful. I know with my husband, we had the conversation and I said, it's okay if you can't honor this. If we can talk all about the plans that I want in the world, and if some accident happens and you're not able to be there, I don't want you to feel more guilt because we talked about this. So kind of giving that permission. We talked about, I hope you'll get remarried. I hope we said the words out loud to each other, which again, I think is such a gift to give one another. To be very wary of, we talked about that, if I ever get like that, pull the plug, or other people who say, give me the whole enchilada. When there's that quick of a wrap up, you gotta pry a little bit more or pull a little bit more out of it. I was doing an event with a gentleman who said, my family knows what I want. We're gonna have a big party at the ocean, and then I'm gonna swim to China, and if I don't make it, oh well. And his wife was next to me and turned around with like the biggest eye roll I had ever seen. She was like, both of his parents have Alzheimer's. That's like his biggest fear is some of the stuff that's been going on there. He always talks about the swimming to China thing, and it's just not helpful at all. That's not gonna be the scenario, and we need to talk about it a little bit more. And that's where understanding what the values are, I think, is very helpful. It's also to be careful about some of the bullying. So there was an event where a woman came up, it was in a room of almost 200 people, and she raised her hand in tears, and she said, I owe my father a tremendous apology, because just last night he started to get really sick, and she listed off all of the conditions he had. And she said, my 4 siblings and I were riding him so hard to go to the hospital. Calling, texting, showing up at the house. I was laying on the guilt trip of his grandson who needs him in his life, and I'm now realizing he's trying to tell us something and nobody is listening to what he wants. This silence is a form of conversation, or this lack of action. So she said, I've already texted, we're having a family meeting tonight. I'm gonna bring the starter kit, we're gonna have more of a conversation, but just to be careful about that, and it's particularly important with the Alzheimer's and dementia kit that we have. If there's somebody that you can't speak with, how do you keep mom at the center of the conversation and not what we all would want when we're thinking about what these wishes are, is really important. And just to note that there's tremendous opportunity for bonding with this. We've seen events where there's tears, but there's a lot of happy tears and fun stories shared and really bringing people closer together. That is a wonderful, we talk about this as the gift of the conversation. It provides so much relief for people it's a real opportunity and framing. So my tips for you would be after today to go through this starter kit and kind of answer some of the questions for yourself. Think about who you might want to share it with. Maybe there's somebody who you're really hoping will tell you their wishes and you want to prepare for that conversation. There might be all of you could share your wishes with somebody else. We often talk about what can you do by next Tuesday. Some is not a number and soon is not a time. So just put it in your calendars, even if it's just to shoot somebody an email or a call saying, when you come into town next, I'd love to have this conversation with you, prep people, just kind of get it going. You can share it with other friends or family members who you think might find this to be helpful. If any of you are here in a professional capacity, you can think about other colleagues who might find this to be helpful if they're helping support others along the way. Then you can appoint who your agent is, talk to your doctor. And then I would urge you, if any of you get the bug, there's some people, we get resumes sent to us after these events of like, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to work on. I told you about those thousands of organizations and individuals doing this in their community. Many of them are retirees who said, I can bring this to my library or my book group or my congregation. So you think about your own personal networks that if this is something you're interested in, we would love to work with you. We get volunteers all over the country who take this on. And with that, I just want to finish with a letter from one of our colleagues. I told you about that early meeting that Ellen had where we were talking about the Conversation Project, and we pulled together a bunch of experts, and there was a physician we were working with who pulled out a piece of notebook paper and wrote a letter to her daughters. And it almost reads as a poem to me. And she says, if you're faced with a decision that you're not ready for, it's okay. I'll try to let you know what I would want for various circumstances, but if you come to something we haven't anticipated, it's okay. And if you come to a decision point and what you decide results in my death, it's okay. You don't need to worry that you've caused my death. You haven't. I will die because of my illness or my body failing or whatever. You don't need to feel responsible. Forgiveness is not required. But if you feel bad, responsible, guilty, first of all, don't. And second of all, you are loved and forgiven. If you're faced with a snap decision, don't panic. Choose comfort, choose home, choose less intervention, choose to be together at my side, holding my hand, singing, laughing, loving, celebrating, and carrying on. I will keep loving you and watching you and being proud of you. And it's an amazing gift that she has given her girls to have in her handwriting a letter that says, it's okay. You don't have to feel the burden of this on your own. I'm here to help you, to guide you through this. And I know many people who are more comfortable with the idea of writing a letter to their loved ones first and then maybe having a conversation, but would just urge all of you guys to think about that as an option. And then I've also included my information here if you've got questions afterwards that we can help answer, or if you're interested in bringing this to your community.